Hey, what's going on, team? Jesse Dale, macro missionary, and we've been diving into a lot about protein these last couple of days. I've actually significantly increased my protein here in the last few days. So a lot of positive things with that. So how can we come out and say, is your high protein diet making you fat? Has I gone schizophrenic? Have I gone crazy? Am I talking one way one day, then another way the next day? Let's dive into exactly what I'm talking about right now and just make you aware of a few things when you, like me, decide that you might want to switch over to a higher protein amount. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is food variance. So for example, 100 grams of oatmeal is going to be the same macronutrient distribution, whether it's from Quaker or whether you get 100 grams of oatmeal in China or Japan. There is really little to no food variance in 100 grams of oatmeal. But let's say we're going to do 100 grams of one of my favorites, ribs. Who doesn't love ribs? One of my all-time favorites. Had ribs this past weekend from Applebee's. Very good. Okay, so if you look at these ribs, and if you can see here, 100 grams from over here, a lot of marbleization. Actually, no, 100 grams over here, very, very lean. Very little marbleization, very, very little fat. Now, if I go over to here and I were to take 100 grams, it's probably not even majority protein. It's probably majority fat. So just in this rib alone, depending on where I'm taking my cut, huge, huge food variance. Okay, another good example would be, we've got 2 Tbones here, all right? So here, same exact cut, both T-bone steaks. These probably came from the same cow, because we buy our meat by the cow. So 2 same T-bones, probably from the same cow, where you can see one is much more marbleized than the other. So again, you're gonna see much higher food variance there. So really, what are you supposed to do? Because I would never say like cut out red meat, but you just need to be more aware of your food variance when switching to higher protein foods, particularly animal products. Now, we could also look at something like this. This is ahi tuna. Very, very small food variance. So pretty much, I mean, there's very little fat on this at all. So pretty much 100 grams of ahi tuna or 100 grams of cod. You just don't see a lot of fat cod in the sea or a lot of overweight ahi tuna in the sea. It's a very, very lean cut. So if you're interested in controlling your calories and you want to do a high protein diet, which absolutely nothing wrong with that, I'm doing it right now, you might want to switch to your low variance cuts. Not that there's anything wrong with a good ribeye or that there's anything wrong with some good ribs, but those have very, very high variance. So what you can do is have the leaner cuts, have the ahi tuna, and then use your olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, or things of that nature to fill in your fats. Another thing when going to from moderate to low protein to higher protein is you're just going to want to watch your omega-6s to omega-3s, particularly considering we are corn feeding everything nowadays. And hey, look. This cow was not built to be eating corn. It wanted to eat grass, and it's a half grass-fed cow. So that is one thing that you want to look at is your inflammatory markers. So basically, I would just balance out your earth and sea. Typically, your sea proteins, shrimp, cold water fish, ahi tuna, those are going to be very high in omega-3s. They're also going to have very low variance as far as food goes. Okay, and again, this is just if you're interested in, if you're doing a cut and you're watching your calories. If you're really not caring where your calories from and you want to go high protein, you really don't have to worry too much about the variance in your red meats or your land type proteins. So some land type proteins that tend to just be naturally very lean, deer, venison, antelope, so a lot of your game meats tend to be very lean. And you can absolutely get, Laura's lean, 96%, 93% if you're going for lower food variance. But the big thing is just to be aware of those variance issues when dealing with land roving proteins, or typically your animal proteins that live on land. So just be aware of the cuts. Try to, if you're watching your calories, cut the visible fat off. But again, if you're literally like me, I increase my protein literally 50, 60 grams. So I'm going through definitely a lot more meat, a lot more animal type proteins. And, I have to kind of be aware of that because I'm also in the middle of a cut. Okay, so calorie control is important to me, so I just have to be aware of that food variance. Particularly when dining out, you'll notice that, some steakhouses, and there's actually different grades of meat, there's your prime cuts and then your other cuts. So when dining out, you'll find a lot of variance. And obviously, when I get steak and eggs at, Waffle House, that's a different quality of meat than I'm gonna get from a filet at Ruth Chris. And they're probably gonna have two vastly different food variances to boot, so on top of that. So just be aware of your food variance. When going higher protein, remember that protein typically has the highest degree of variance because animals are like us. We come in all different shapes and sizes and body fat percentages, so do animals. So be aware of that while you're rocking your higher protein diet. If you missed any of our prior like yesterday's episode as far as why you should increase your protein, check it out. We gave 3 really good reasons that you might not have thought of as far as why you should increase your protein. Have a rocking week. If you have any questions, message us, private message us. We'd love to answer your questions and get you rock and rolling. Have a great week.